Hello, everybody. Welcome. Thank you so much for joining us this evening for our third virtual conversation. I am Margaret Shigeko Starbuck, the Artistic Associate at Boston Court, Pasadena, and I'm joined today by E.M. Lewis, award-winning playwright of How the Light Gets In, Magellanica, The Gun Show, Song of Extinction, and Apple Season. I will also shortly be joined by Emilie Pascale Beck, the Boston Court Literary Manager and Director of New Play Development. And today, Emilie and Ellen, as we know E.M. Lewis, will be talking about the new play development process for How the Light Gets In, from initial idea to final production at Boston Court last fall, which Emilie directed. We're having just slight technical difficulties, so we should be able to get Emilie on screen shortly. Before we dive into conversation about How the Light Gets In, I wanted to just mention a few things. First, I wanted to acknowledge that Boston Court Pasadena is located on the lands of the Gabrielino Tongva people, also known as Kizh Nation, who are the ancestral present day and future stewards of this land known as Los Angeles. Ellen is streaming here to us from the Willamette Valley in Oregon, which is on the traditional lands of the Antioch and Kalapuya tribes, which are now part of the Confederated Tribes of the Grand Ronde. Second, we are planning for everything to go smoothly on the technical end of things, but obviously, please bear with us if there are any strange tech glitches. Obviously, we're having a little bit of trouble this evening. If you're watching this video, you cannot be seen or heard, so not to worry if you have any crying babies or barking dogs in your house. We can't see or hear them. We're going to kick things off this evening with about 25 minutes of Emilie and Ellen discussing the development process for How the Light Gets In. And then we're going to open it up to questions from the audience for about 20 minutes. So we want to hear from you. Please post your questions in the Ask a Question feature, which is at the bottom of your screen, and we'll try to make sure we answer as many as possible. And please say hello to us in the chat here on the right-hand side of your screen, if you see it there on the right-hand side of your screen. This stream will be available on Crowdcast here. It's being recorded. It's also going to be available on the Boston Court website, on YouTube, and on Facebook, where you can find a captioned version. Last, but certainly not least, we love Ellen and her work, and we always want to talk to her. But today's conversation is particularly special because How the Light Gets In was awarded the prestigious Steinberg American Theater Critics Association Award for Best New Play this May. And this award is given annually to the best new play produced outside of New York City. So we are incredibly proud of Ellen and How the Light Gets In for winning this amazing award. And I am going to just check in and make sure that everyone is able to join us on screen here. So just give me 1 minute. Hi, Ellen.
Hello.
I'm glad you're back on screen with me. So I just wanted to say, first off, a huge congratulations for winning the Steinberg Award for How the Light Gets In. That's an amazing achievement. I know that some of the past recipients are sort of like the greats of American theater, like Arthur Miller and August Wilson. So you are in incredible company.
I'm really honored and grateful to the American Theater Critics Association for the award. It's a really special recognition of for a play to receive, and it's also a substantial monetary award that they give, which in these uncertain times for artistic creative types like us is I'm particularly grateful for. So
yes. Oh yeah, I'm
and,
sure.
And also to all of you at Boston Court, because it is for a produced play and y'all produced it. So
well, it was our pleasure to produce it. I mean, what a beautiful play. So yeah, so I think Emilie is still having a little bit of trouble with her internet. So I think maybe I'm going to invite Jessica, our artistic director, to join us on screen, and she can kind of step in here as a backup for Emilie to help us jump into this conversation. So Ellen, I think this evening we're just here to talk about how this whole play got started. I know that you and Emilie were in talks from like the very, very beginning of your process when this was sort of just a thought in your head. So I'm wondering if you can sort of start us off by talking a little bit about that initial stage of the production. And Jessica, if you have anything to add, please jump in.
Well, the one thing I'll jump in and say, Ellen, is it's a little hard to hear you. And if there's a way of increasing your volume, that would be amazing.
I will work on my big voice.
Yeah, let's keep seeing if you can push a mic up in some way.
Yep.
I will also just say, you know, what I know to be true, and then I'd love you to fill in from there. By the way, friends, Ellen's being modest. That Steinberg Award she won was for $25,000. It is kind of an astonishing honor, and she really is in such incredible company, and what a gift. And this really started in the way, like, my best understanding is you sent Emilie an email and said, I have an idea. I don't even think it's a play yet. And take it from there, Ellen.
Okay, so about 3 years ago, I was going through some stuff, and as always happens with writers, we try and write our way out of the darkness, and that's what I was doing. And I had about 57 sticky notes and backs of envelopes with chicken scratch on them of something that felt like it was becoming a play. And I had known Emilie from back when I lived in Los Angeles and was part of the Los Angeles theater community, and remembered working with her. And for some reason, for a lot of reasons, she was the first one who I thought of sending it to. And I never send anything to a director that early on in the process. I just usually I have to get to a draft or a proper something that I know what I'm doing. But I just had an instinct to email the strange little bits that I had to Emilie and tell her that I just wanted to reach toward her with this play, whatever it was becoming. And that started us on a journey that brings us all the way through development there at Boston Court, where I was part of the new play development program in your summer festival. And then we went out to Chautauqua together to work on the play. And then, of course, the world premiere.
Yeah, that's so true. Margaret, I'm seeing lots of comments about people not seeing things. And just to make sure this conversation is actually appreciable to people, I'm kind of wondering if we should do what we did with Greg, go to a Zoom and then come back, you know, and I'm wondering if, you know, if that might be a good idea.
Sure, we can definitely try that. Oh, it looks like I think sometimes it's people's at home internet not being quite on.
Okay.
Yeah, so I think for the most part, people can see us. I think that's just on a case-by-case basis that people's at-home internet isn't working quite. It looks like now we're getting a lot of messages saying everything's good for them. So I think we should
carry on.
Yeah.
I'm curious. Do you have any of those sticky notes? Like what did they say? I'm just so curious. And also, you know, I that's so great. You actually have evidence. When I when I shorthand the story of how the light gets in, and just in case there are people joining us who didn't get an opportunity to see the play, I talk about it as sort of four damaged people who come together and ultimately form new family. That's my elevator pitch, or but it's really before that I actually really want to hear the notes, but I'll just say, can you talk a little bit about the inspiration for the title? Because I think there's something really powerful about that, and it might give good context for everything.
Absolutely. The title, as a lot of you will probably know, is stolen straight from a Leonard Cohen song called Anthem. It's a beautiful song, and I love his work. Generally speaking, it's so much about both the spirit and the body, which so is this play. And that line, there's a crack in everything. That's how the light gets in, is one that the first time I heard it just hit me like a brick and continues to resonate. But certainly, when I started writing this play, I usually get my titles very early on, and that was the title instantly when I started thinking about this play, and it started coming to me, because I knew that there was something about darkness and light in the play. There was something about brokenness and healedness. Is that Emilie, Beck?
It's Emilie. I'm so excited.
Hello. My dear Emilie.
Finally, so sorry to be late to the party.
I'm just pinch hitting, but I'm going to disappear. I'm going to disappear in case, in a minute, but I'm just going to let Ellen finish that conversation because it's great.
Yeah.
Sure. I was just talking
about.
Yes,
you may actually want to hang out because I am.
Okay, I'll hang out.
Origin stories for the play and where it came from. So, like any play for a playwright, it comes from all sorts of places, most of them messy and personal, and this one is no different. Because the main character in this play, Grace Wheeler, is part of a romantic story, and that's how I like to talk about this play, is that it's a romantic comedy, but it is a story that is about people who have had very dark and desperate times, and she is, at the very beginning of the play, finds out that she has breast cancer, and so did I. And that was the particular darkness that I was writing my way through as I was working on this play. But it's about a lot of things. It's about a Japanese architect and a tortured tattoo artist who has a great gift, and a girl who lives underneath the weeping willow tree at the Japanese garden. And so there's a lot of other layers that are happening in the story as well.
Ellen, will you read us what's on the sticky note or a piece of that paper? Because I think people are genuinely, I know I am personally very deeply interested in how a play goes from wisps in your brain to the fully formed production that we made. Will you read?
I feel like I should have looked at these ahead of time to make sure that they were what they said, but I'm just going to wing it. I'm putting on my glasses so that I can see them. I feel really ugly right now. Why are you asking me that? Aggressive and angry in that way that people who are hurt and scared can be. And I'm lopsided. I will never not be lopsided.
That's on that little blue sticky? Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
Here's another one. I am too fat. You're just saying that to make me feel better. I have a strange mole on my left knee. That was supposed to be a reassuring little dialogue between Haruki and Grace. I have notebooks that I was writing in, and I remember that when I was working on the play, it really started to come to me when I was going through radiation. I had 6.5 weeks of that every day. And I was walking. They told me to walk. And so I was walking up and down the Abbey Hill. And the play was coming to me so fast that I had to keep paper in my pocket and a notebook with me, because just pieces of dialogue were starting to come to me. The characters were very fully formed in my head already at that beginning point. And so they were keeping me company. That's the way I always like to think of my characters.
That's really beautiful. I'm going to ask this question as a handoff to Emilie Pascale Beck, because Emilie, in addition to all her titles at Boston Court, was also the director of the play, as I'm sure you are all aware. And she is the one who was the recipient of Ellen's email that said, I have this thing, it's kind of, I don't know. So can you guys talk about what happened next from those really beautiful little scraps of paper to next steps?
I actually, am I okay? Am I freezy or anything? I'm okay. All right, good. I actually printed out some of our initial emails. And Ellen, do you mind if I read little bits? So the very first email I got from Ellen, part of it said, I'm working on a totally messy, personal, crazy new play. It is in its early stages, but she wrote she was committed to doing there was a reading of it in Portland that she was aiming for. So it's very actively in progress. It's called How the Light Gets In. It's kind of a romantic comedy about Japanese gardens, tattoo artists, lost girls, and breast cancer. I was wondering if I could send it to you. And so, of course, I told her to send it to me. She said, when she sent it to me, she wrote, it's at a more raw state than I'd usually send to the theater. But then she added that she was looking for more development and then production at that point. This was in 2017. And I want to point out that Ellen and I had known each other for a long time and had done little projects together, and we're always looking for the right production. And before I go on, because well, actually, I'm just going to read this part. So Ellen sent a script that was like the beginnings. You know, like you can see our final script in this script, but her final script, I should say, but it's like bits and pieces. And at the end, she had a page at the end that says, how does the play end? What do all four main characters need? Do they get what they need? What kind of story is this? Whose play is this? This is in the middle of a very long page of questions. And so before I go on, I just want to ask Ellen, you know, I don't think you usually send plays in this state to anybody. And I'm wondering where you were to send that, to reach out and send it.
I just had a feeling. I just really never do this, but I had a feeling that I should. I thought of you. I'd been scribbling messy bits and pieces here and there, and I thought of you. And I've worked with a lot of directors over the years and a lot of different places, and we weren't even geographically close because I'm living, you know, up here in Oregon now, and you're still in Los Angeles. But there was something about the work that we had done together and the grace, if I might, with which you cast the play and worked with the actors and thought about the story and challenged me as a playwright to find the best form of the story, that I think went into my decision to honor that impulse and just do what I felt like I wanted to, which was reach out to you. And because sometimes you can't. Sometimes the universe tells you what to do and you should listen. So I think it was right, Emilie.
I think it was right. We also shared a very personal experience in that we were both going through cancer at around the same time. So there was a bond there. But so I want to kind of jump in and talk about, because I know we've missed a lot of time here already, talk about one of the kind of major first shifts that we made. So Ellen sent a script to me that, as I said, was sort of the beginnings of the play. And it had these beautiful stage directions in it. And then I gave her, basically the only feedback I gave her was in the form of questions, really. And to say, good, keep writing, send me another draft. And in the next draft, the stage directions had become narration. So in the next draft, it was a 6-character play, and 2 of those characters were narrators, right? Do you want to talk about that transition for yourself?
Absolutely. So I knew that the play had this sort of somewhat presentational way about it, as it was talking about itself while it was also happening at the same time, in that wonderful way that only works on the stage. And so I was really trying to figure out what the story was, but also how to tell it, what the mechanism of telling of the play was. And so I thought, well, maybe it is narrators who are helping these characters to tell their story, and also moving things around so that the stage could be very simple, like a bench would appear and then they push it away, or it needed to rain so they could make it rain, like the narrators could be flowing in and out of the story, while helping the characters to tell their own stories that are interwoven with each other. And that's the draft that had a reading at the Fertile Ground Festival here in Portland, Oregon, which is a wonderful, open to everybody explosion of new work where you can present things at any stage in development, which is something that playwrights really need to have, a place to share and work on things. And my friend and playwright Dan Katroser directed that, and it was great to share, even if it was messy beginnings of the play with an audience, and kind of be pushed also to finish a draft. But then I got the opportunity, you invited me to come to Pasadena and work on the play, and that's when it made the next step.
Yeah, so that the script that you sent with the narrators was the script, the first version that I brought into Jessica and Michael McKetty, and we were all very intrigued at that point, and we had a conversation where we said, I wonder if the narrators need to be narrators. That is, there are a couple of characters in the script who maybe can narrate themselves and the kind of A story. They were sort of the B story, and so I came back to you with that idea, and I actually want to. Can I read from that email exchange? Because it's funny. So Ellen said, I had proposed this to her over the phone, and then she sent me an email saying, regarding the narration, I'm game but nervous. It's okay if I'm nervous. I want to be a bold explorer. And, she said it's going to get messy. And I wrote her back and I said, yes, let's get messy. That's what this week is about. I think it's really sometimes hard to go into a new play workshop where you want to be shiny, you want to make it shiny. And what we love at Boston Court is, no, let's get messy. Let's see what all the innards look like, and find out what the heart and guts of the play might be. Because you can always go back. You can always change a script back. And yeah, so that's all I'm going to read from that email. But so that's what Ellen did. She took the narration and she gave it to these 2 characters, Kat and Tommy. And what was your experience going through that?
Well, it was much like jumping into the deep end. It was very scary to contemplate doing, and when I started doing it, it was miraculously easy, in that way that sometimes things are easy because they're the way that the play wants to go. I thought it was a brilliant suggestion and an exciting suggestion because it served a lot of purposes. One of the purposes it served was to make everything so much more intimate. There were no spectators anymore. There were only participants in the story who had their own feelings and stepped into their own journeys, but also were witnessing simultaneously each other's journeys. And nobody was outside of it. Everybody was inside of it. And I loved that. And so it was very fast rewriting, though. There is a coffee shop in Eagle Rock, because I was staying with Emilie, that I just basically, like 9 hours, one of those, where they don't throw you out. You just keep buying coffee and writing and writing. But it was an exciting week when we were there working on the play during the festival.
And there's the part of the process, right, is going from the flatness of the page to the dimension of having actors and hearing these words. And one of the things that we discovered in that workshop was the nonverbal communication between these characters who became the narrators. And that was so exciting to see the possibilities, these connections that were formed on stage that you can't see on paper. We always talk, Jess and Michael and I always talked about how you have to hear a play in the air. It's very hard to read a play on the paper. I mean, we do it all the time, but it's difficult, especially the kind of work we do. So we did this workshop. We learned a lot. We had a lot of questions coming out of it. It still was sort of finding itself. It wasn't, you could tell it wasn't fully formed yet. And then we had this amazing opportunity to go to Chautauqua. Did you guys talk about this already?
No.
So Chautauqua has this amazing new play festival. They add production elements, which kind of seems crazy. It's the same sport, but suddenly you have a set designer and a sound designer and a lighting designer and a costume designer to work with. And it felt overwhelming, and at the same time it was a huge gift because you learn so much. In the same way, when you add actors, you also learn a lot by adding elements. We had an amazing team at Chautauqua and amazing actors. And at Chautauqua, I would say we were experimenting a lot.
Yeah. There was also much rewriting there in our little third floor walk-up garret room that they put us. We were roomies, Emilie and I. And we had a fabulous cast and designers. And really, it was such a gift because plays are not meant to stay in 2 dimensions. They are meant to be explored in 3 dimensions and presented in 3 dimensions with real breathing human beings and with stuff and in motion and over time and with an audience. And so to be able to experiment live with all of those elements, even if some of them were fast and piecemeal, was tremendous. And our actors were very game, as were our designers, because we did change a lot every single day. And we had, was it 4 readings for the audience? Was it
3? I think 3.
Yeah, but
3.
They have a huge audience. So it was like, okay, I'm changing the beginning again. Hold on, everybody. But we were allowed to play as much as we needed to, even with that audience every day who was there to participate in the development of the new play. So that was great. And it was very purposeful because we knew that our production was coming right on its heels. That had already been decided on. And
yeah.
really so.
And I think there were two pieces that I would say that throughout all of this process, you know, from the first time Ellen emailed me to getting to production, we were working on the opening and what I would call a key scene. There was a scene that we couldn't quite figure out what is this? What's the connection that's missing here? And for a long time, Ellen had written this fantastic duet, we called it, between Tommy Z and Haruki. And it was so much fun. It was these two guys having a sort of not a talk together. They weren't in the same space, but they were, and they were talking about art, and it was really exciting. And it was such a great piece. But at some point we realized it wasn't the right piece. It didn't help tell the story. And that was Ellen, do you want to talk at all about, I mean, I don't even know if you remember, because there were all these little micro steps to get there, but taking that scene out and finding the scene with Haruki and Kat and the origami.
Yeah, it took a long time to get to it because, well, first I had to come to terms with losing the scene that was there, and it worked fantastically, if I do say so myself, in and of itself. It was fun and poetic and about art making, and the guys were delivering the heck out of it each night and all of that. And so there is something in us that does not want to kill our darlings. And it was a pretty darling. But the more we lived the play together, it doesn't actually matter how well it works in and of itself. It's not a poem. It is part of a play. It has to serve the larger story. And I think it was somewhere during Chautauqua that I came to terms with losing it, but it wasn't until we were working together back in Pasadena at Boston Court that I was able to write the new scene. And I think we were actually possibly in
previews. I think we were in previews.
Oh my God, maybe we were in previews. It was very close. But it was hard to imagine what the new scene could be. But again, you're a very lucky playwright if you are surrounded by bold and lovingly supportive theater makers, which I was at Boston Court, who keep encouraging you to find and find and find until you find everything that the play wants to be. And the scene that ultimately came of that, the first time that Ryan Yu, who was playing Haruki magnificently, was sitting there in the garden and folding a paper crane and handing that to our dear cat who lived under the bridge. And there was something exquisitely simple and human and transformational in that moment that the other could never have been. And it was exactly what the play needed. So it's scary and exciting when you have those moments of finding.
And it connected the story. Sorry, Margaret. It connected the story, which was the amazing thing. As we were searching for that, we didn't know what it was, but suddenly it was the connection from Haruki to Kat to Grace to Tommy, the line between the four of them that we needed.
Right. That could be physically transferred from one to the other, that piece of, because objects sometimes say so much more than words can, and they were all at a place where words were failing them. But a lot could be said by the gift of this object, one to the other.
Sorry, Mark,
I just wanted to say we have a lot of questions from the audience, and I was going to say if this is an okay point to transition, I would like to start answering some of them. Terrific. Okay. Well, so our first question comes from Catherine, who asks, can you talk about the process of collaboration with the set designer and developing the visual sensibility of the production?
Absolutely. Emilie, we had such a fantastic set designer.
We did. We worked with Teshi Nakagawa, and it felt really important to us that we work with somebody who was of Japanese descent, who had that sense of connection to what a Japanese garden was, the symbolism of it, the feel of it. And Teshi is a dream to work with. I also want to say that at Chautauqua, we worked with Sasha Schwartz, who was also just game for jumping in and making a set out of nothing, like out of some plywood and newspaper, which was amazing. I think the biggest challenge for the set is that everything takes place under a Japanese, under a willow tree. But it also takes place in all these different locations: Grace's apartment and Tommy's tattoo parlor and the doctor's office and the hospital. And so it had to be a set that could be symbolic, that could be everything and nothing at once. And it also has to be, Haruki is there to build a thing that is impossible to build, a piece of art that lives in nature, that is of it, that doesn't become greater than it, and it has to happen at the end like this, that it comes together. And
lots of conversations with him about that, didn't we? Yeah.
Yes. And so we had, obviously it's sort of a blank canvas that any set designer could go in a million directions with it. And Teshi had this beautiful idea of creating a space where platforms could be used in different ways that were the garden, but were other places, and then had these stunning panels. Do we have a picture, Margaret?
We do. I can't share my screen with photos while there are 4 of us.
I'm gonna go away, but maybe talk about kintsugi because it might be valuable.
Yes, thank you.
Okay, I should be able to share.
While Margaret's sharing, Ellen, do you want to talk about kintsugi?
Sure. I wanted to pause also and just give a shout out to the Portland Japanese Garden, which is one of the most gorgeous Japanese gardens, in which I walked at many times when I was working on this play. It's a favorite spot of mine. Oh, there's that set. I loved my set so much.
So you can see those panels. The blue light is actually behind the panels, and the panels have a tree outlined. And what would happen and that was the tree. And what would happen at the end of the play is those panels would come together, and suddenly the tree would be whole in the way that the characters became whole. Certainly Grace became whole, or was on her way to. And the floor was painted like a Zen garden. So yeah, that's a great image of the tree. So Ellen, will you talk about kintsugi?
Sure. One of the inspirations for the play was the idea of kintsugi, which is a Japanese mending technique for broken pottery, where instead of heaving out something that's broken, they mend it, and the mending is actually considered, they use gold to mend it, and it's makes the object more beautiful, not in spite of its brokenness, but with its brokenness. And a lot of the ideas in the play connected with that idea of trying to figure out how to see yourself as beautiful when you are something that has been broken in a way that makes you feel very vulnerable. And so kintsugi was very important in the play.
If you're ready to answer a new question there, many. Awesome. So I guess this is actually kind of going off of that last question. Someone has asked, how did the final product compare to the play you envisioned when you wrote it, Ellen? Sort of, if there was how did the visuals of it look compared to what was in your head?
I would say, because I'm not a designer, I could never have imagined something so beautiful as what Tedeschi created on the gorgeous Boston Court stage there. But it moved like the play wanted to move in every way of my imagination, is that there was a flow of how the characters could see each other and then be with each other and then watch each other, and the way that he created the stage to move and work was exactly the way I saw my play working and the way the play needed to work. Also, it was beautiful and graceful in the way that a Japanese garden is, and that was also important to me. I wanted to throw out this a book that I enjoyed, which I bought at Vroman's, by the way. Shout out to more Pasadena coolness. But if you've walked in a Japanese garden, there's something that my main character Grace talks about. She's a docent. She works as a docent in the Japanese garden, and she talks about how you have to watch your step because the stone pathways are made to slow you down, not speed you up along your way, so that you can see more clearly and more carefully. And there was something wonderful about the steps that were built into our set, that the actors had to step carefully because it was built like that, and there was something to the precariousness, but also the caretaking that he got so right. So I was very happy.
That's wonderful. I'm so glad. Let's see. Mona has asked, what was the most surprising aspect of the development process? What was the most rewarding aspect?
Emilie, do you have thoughts?
This was a particularly rewarding collaboration, I have to say. From the very start, I think Ellen and I were on the same page. We had the same hopes. We had the same feeling about what this play was and what it could be. We treated each other with a kindness. And I say that because the collaboration of theater can sometimes be difficult, can sometimes be antagonistic, only because everybody sees something in sometimes a different way. And so this particular collaboration was really, really special. And each cast that we had was an astonishing cast and taught us so much. We had Ryan Yu was our Haruki all the way through, but we had different Graces, we had different cats, we had different Tommies, and they taught us so much and were so generous. I think what was wonderful for me was how much there was just growth at every point. There was a willingness to dig deep and ask questions and take chances and go further and go deeper, and it was thrilling.
It was an absolute joy to work with you, Emilie, bottom to top, and I was grateful for the presence of a kind and smart collaborator and team, because the whole team there that you brought together and that you were part of with Jessica and Michael, but just that you brought together with the actors and were wonderful. But that helps a playwright to go where you need to go. And it's always scary, and you always feel vulnerable, and you never know what you're doing, and you always feel like you should. And it's just, there's lots of messy emotional bits that come from being a playwright. You want it to be wonderful what you're presenting, and there's a great nervousness. And so having a team, I guess the greatest challenge to me was hanging in there with all of that and not fleeing. It's very easy to imagine at different places saying, oh, this is too hard. These are too big of questions that I'm asking. And I feel too vulnerable with all of you to go there with all of you. But the joy was that we can give ourselves the gift of transformation as human beings when we are writing the transformation in our characters and seeing that brought to life by our directors and the teams that they bring together. So I feel more whole for having done this play, and that's a lot.
Oh, I feel that way too. I do. Yeah, it was a very special experience.
That's beautiful. I'm so glad that it was such a positive experience for everyone. So I think we have time for one last question. The last question here is from Millicent, and she asks, Ellen, are you saving your, quote, precious darlings like the duet scene for later use, or do you move on and consider them as an artifact of the creative process?
I do save everything. I have, as you saw, all of the little notebooks and bits of paper, and I actually have a bin into which I put all of the different drafts and rewrites and pieces of a play and its development. That duet piece may well live somewhere else. It did have kind of a freestanding quality to it, so who knows? I don't know the performance poets that I need to find out there in the world. It's possible. It's also, I find that when I'm working on a play, the questions that I'm asking myself in this play often move into the next play and come a little bit from the last play before that. There is a through line in a playwright's life you can kind of see a little bit if you look back through and forward on to what's coming next. So you may see the duet yet if you missed it in that first workshop that we did.
Wonderful. Well, thank you to everyone so much for joining us. Thank you, Ellen and Emilie and Jessica, for all of these wonderful, thoughtful, questions and answers, and letting us all into the process of how the light gets in came into the world. This was such a pleasure to hear about. Emilie or Ellen, do you have any closing thoughts you'd like to say?
Well, I'd just like to say a huge thank you to Emilie and to everybody at Boston Court for your beautiful work on the play, on bringing it to life. It couldn't have possibly been in better hands with anyone, and it was a joy and a pleasure, and thank you also to everybody who's here tonight and let us talk about it.
And I just want to say congratulations to you once again for that amazing award, which is so deserved. This is a beautiful, unique play, and I'm so pleased for you, and we are all so pleased for you and proud, and I'm delighted that I was along for the ride.
You're more than that. And thank you, Margaret, for putting this all together.
Yes, of course. Thank you. Thank you both so much. Thank you to everyone who's watching. Thank you for bearing with us as we navigate this new, strange technical world that we are all living in. I really appreciate your patience at the top. And next week, you can join us on Tuesday night for a Zoom workshop with actor and activist Tim Guinea. He's giving a talk and a workshop about climate change activism. It'll be on Zoom, and you can sign up for that on our website. There's more information there. So we hope to continue seeing you at our virtual events. We love getting to say hello to you. And thank you so much. We'll say goodbye.
Bye, everybody.
Thank you.